But yeah, maybe we can touch on your new chapbook, Mating Calls of a Specter. Was there any particular distinction of the writing process for these poems? You mentioned it took a couple of years in the making.
Mhm.
Was it just a collection that came together? Was it more of an organized process?
Yeah, it kind of started as something that was organized, then fell apart, then came back to being very organized. It started as a collection that I was exploring about murder ballads, and actually had a completed chapbook around that, but something was not sitting right with me about it. Like I really felt a discomfort about the harm that was taking place on the page. And I also felt that there was a voice that was starting to develop that I needed to spend more time with. So I kind of really did a major revision where I just took out so many of the poems and just trashed them. And then realized that what I was left with was someone who wanted to interact with, well, basically, I'll just say what the book is about. The book is about a young woman who wakes up, who is waking up to being a ghost for the first time. And she's starting to realize that across this rural landscape out through the field, she can see her town and the house she grew up in and the school that she went to. And there's this draw, this pull that's pulling her back to haunt the town and the people that participated in her demise. And so the book is very much about memory and how memory lives in our body and the things that will pull us back. And it's also about really about rape culture and how many small moments can make up a death of a person or parts of a person. Um, and in the book, there is not any, there's a lack of graphic depictions of murder or rape. That is not in this book. And that was really important to me. And I think that that's where a lot of the time went into, is how do you talk about something like that without actually repeating harm on the page? For sure, someone could read this and it could be triggering for them or bring up memories and double down on harm. So acknowledge that there is a content warning with this chap. But once I started to see the voice and hear this person and let her be in the lead of creating the world, then the chapbook just kind of came together as a whole. And I really feel like it's like, yeah, I mean, yeah, like I get it, I wrote it, but I felt like it was really giving over to this other voice and letting her lead the way.
So something that came through like a character, is that something you've worked with before a lot? Or I mean, like
Um,
almost in
not
that
in
kind of
poetry.
fictional realm?
Yeah, well, exactly. So not in my poems. For sure, there's some poems that maybe bring out a little bit more of like maybe like a little hidden persona that I have or something like that. But no, this was very much a character that was developed like I would within a short story. Um, so this is the first time that I just wrote to a character in poetry.
Yeah, that's interesting too, and it gives it that kind of narrative arc aspect of a collection, which each individual poem may be able to stand alone by itself, or at least some of them would be, but
I don't
then
think they can
as a whole.
actually.
Oh, really?
It, yeah, when I was working with Tusculum Review is the publisher, and they were really wonderful. And it was selected for their chapbook prize by Justin Philip Reed. And when I was talking to the editors and we were putting together a reading for it, one of the challenges that we all felt is like, we have a limited amount of time. How do we pick and pull poems out of this? Because they very much they work within that narrative arc. Um, and because of that, I had never submitted them individually to, usually I try to, vet my poem or see if my poems can get vetted by someone else before they reach collection stage. But I did not do that with this chapbook because I couldn't see them outside of each other.
Yeah, so that maybe does lend itself more to like a story format where you can't exactly take, chapter 8 and listeners read this and you'll get
Yeah.
it. Yeah, so that is an interesting twist on that. One thing out of the poems that I've encountered of yours, I love the titles. I think I mentioned that when I spoke to you previously. Is that something that you have a title first, a title last? Do you have like a notebook where you just write down a list of that's an interesting phrase, that's a title? That's that's something that you're conscious of because they are attention getting. Just
Um,
titles of poems, titles of the collections even.
I I think that I try not to limit myself with the title. I'm like, if it needs 2 lines, it needs 2 lines, and that's not always easy because when you're trying to write a bio with these long titles, I'm like, oh my God, like, can I calm it down for a second? But yeah, no, sometimes I have a title where I'm like, I need to write a poem for this title and see what comes of it. And that can act as a prompt, it
Yeah,
can
yeah.
get me creative. But usually I think what happens is I have a first line or a line somewhere in the poem that I'm like, this is not fitting, this is not right. And I'm like, bump it to the title, see if that works. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. But I think that's often where they come from.
Yeah, nice. So yeah, side note, your poem, The Everlasting Eulogy of Lush, which was issue 8, going back to the archives of Wild Roof Journals. That was one specific example I'll throw out there.